welcome to Femme Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Rose Portela, and today we are touching down in the City of Lights to go on a journey of self-discovery. But before we dive into today's episode, let me tell you how you can support and follow the pod. You can subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch full video breakdowns on YouTube and on Spotify. You can follow the pod over on Instagram and TikTok. That is at Femme Furious Pod. You can also join our free newsletter, Lipstick and Lore. And last but not least, if you have thoughts, feelings, opinions, you can send those over to the email. The inbox is wide open. That is femmeandfuriouspod@gmail.com. Okay, let's take a chic peek at today's episode. It is Season 3, Episode 9 of The Summer I Turned Pretty. It is titled Last Call, and it is written by Sinead Daly and directed by Jesse Peretz. Here is your blanket spoiler warning. We are talking about all 3 seasons of The Summer I Turned Pretty. We are potentially talking about the books as well. Here is your synopsis. I don't know how much we can spoil the books at this point because we're past the books. We are in like an elongated epilogue at this point. So here's your synopsis. We watch as everyone reels from the aftermath of the breakup. Belly finds herself in Paris. Jeremiah is cared for by Stephen and Taylor, who finally rekindle their flame. Conrad attempts to help while digesting his feelings for Belly, and Adam and Laurel try their very best to parent their way through this big, fat mess. All right. Let's jump into this week's Femme Frame, where we will dive into key feminist themes, herstory, cultural context, and more. This is probably one of the most vulnerable pieces that I think I've put together for this podcast, because it's driven from an emotional place. It's not driven from any of the cultural or historical context, and I probably could have dove a little bit deeper on those fronts, but this one just felt like it was one for the emotional babies out there. I know that I've nodded to my past relationships before, but for those of you who were incredibly triggered by Jeremiah's behavior this episode, me too. People online often call Jeremiah the golden retriever, but his manipulation knows no bounds, and it's masked under the guise of being easy and fun. My ex was exactly like this. On the surface, he was the life of the party. He was always cracking jokes. He was always bringing good vibes. And from a distance, he looked like the guy that everyone wanted to be around. But to me, it was the most emotionally abusive relationship that I've ever been in. Like Belly, when I was in this relationship, I had a very small circle of support. I had complicated feelings about the situation. I had a similar loss of identity like Belly had, and just like Belly, I had a persistent need to put my partner's needs before my own. To everyone else, he was the star of the show. To me, it felt like Stockholm Syndrome and not knowing how to get out of it. Seeing Belly being backed into a corner and not knowing what to do with the mess that she's in, that's a very familiar feeling for me. And Jeremiah's behavior toward Belly and the competition that he created with Conrad mirrors the same unhealthy dynamic. On Threads, Life with Lucero, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, made an incredible post that I will tag in the show notes. It's a compilation video of all of the times that Jeremiah acknowledges either out loud or in his head the relationship between Conrad and Belly. And if you've listened to me before, you know that I've hated Jeremiah since season 1 when he ruined Belly and Conrad's kiss on the 4th of July. He has been inserting himself as a manipulator to get something out of this relationship or to prevent Conrad actually from getting something. And Life with Lucero captions this essence perfectly. They say, and I quote, "He knew about Belly and Conrad from the beginning. He saw it, heard it, felt it, even admitted it out loud sometimes. And still, he kept inserting himself. That's then, when all crumbles, he sarcastically expects a note from Conrad saying, 'Sorry I ruined your life. Here's some red Gatorade.'" Later on in the post, they add, "Conrad owned his truth." And they're referring to, at this point, Conrad admitting to Jeremiah, not once but twice, that he is in love with Belly. He's admitting his feelings for her, even though he hadn't necessarily admitted them to Belly. He admits them to Jeremiah twice. So this is referring to the fact that Jeremiah is saying like, oh, even now you still can't say it in this past episode. So they say, Life with Lucero says, Conrad owned his truth. Jared just can't handle it because facing it means admitting the real problem isn't Conrad. It's that Belly was never fully his, and he walked himself right into halfway love with eyes wide open. Exactly. Jeremiah has consistently taken advantage of Belly's insecurities to feed his own ego. I'm not saying they don't love each other, because of course they do. They've known each other their whole lives, but they are not in love, and their relationship is a one-way street. Jeremiah admits to being the one who calls off the wedding, yet he is shocked when she doesn't immediately check in on him. And when she finally does, she asks him, "How are you?" And he doesn't ask her back. He doesn't say, "How are you? How are you holding up with all of this? How are you feeling about all of this?" Last week, he admitted to picking a fight and breaking up with her just so he could pity fuck somebody else because he was jealous that she spent Christmas with Conrad, even though he also acknowledged that he knew definitively that nothing happened between the two of them. Which brings me to the pulse of my femme frame today. Why does the internet hate Belly so much? There seems to be an undertone of unresolved misogyny that I do not think we are particularly looking at when it comes to this story. People act like it is impossible to fall in love with two brothers. And I don't know, because I am just a girl, and I am like #1 fan club of pretty much anyone that I could meet that I think is hot or amazing. Has anyone seen the Franco brothers? The Hemsworth brothers, the Jonas brothers. In high school, I had twin guy friends, and I had a crush on both of them. So, guess the internet should hate me too. It happens. Belly grew up with these boys. She had a level of intimacy with both of them even before sex was a part of the picture. And I understand because the show went in a different direction. The show introduces sex with both brothers where the books did not. But because people dislike her so much, they completely missed the heartbeat of this episode and wrote it off as a filler episode and as a Coach and AirTag commercial. And this really fucking hurt my heart. Because what actually happens in this episode is huge. Belly has been lost inside of her relationships with both Fisher boys for so long, and that's why she leaves Conrad at the airport without saying anything. Because she recognizes, whether it is consciously or unconsciously, that this is no longer about choosing Conrad or Jeremiah. It's not about choosing a brother. It's the fact that she doesn't fully know herself yet. She even says it outright. She says it to Jeremiah. "I don't know who I am anymore." And instead of hearing that for what it is, Belly claiming her own need for self-discovery, Jeremiah tries to keep her small. He says, "I know who you are. I will remind you every day." And it is the same vibe as when she says to him, "I don't want to look out at a sea of strangers on our wedding day." And he responds, "So just look at me." Like, bro, you're missing the point of what she is saying. You are taking the words as literal instead of hearing the subtext or the undertone underneath them. And I don't think that either one of those things that she says is like, wow, there's a lot of subtext underneath there. I think it's pretty on the surface what's going on. "I don't know who I am anymore." She is telling him in that moment she needs time, not necessarily even from him or from their relationship or whatever. She's saying, "I need time to understand who I am." And she continues to say that in that monologue that she gives him. But like any abusive or unhealthy relationship, Jeremiah can't prioritize her needs at all. He didn't want her to go to Paris in the first place. And maybe this is out of his own fear that he would cheat again. Or maybe it's because he was worried that she would go to Paris and she'd wake up from this daydream and delusion of their relationship and leave him on her own whimsy without having Conrad there as a fall man for the ending of their relationship. Either way, his motivations are selfish. When Belly tells him, "I came to Paris because I need time to think," the key word is time. Not a few hours, but real space. Yet Jeremiah makes it about himself and says, "I've been thinking too," and this is less than 24 hours after their breakup when he's done nothing all day. Like literally nothing. So no. And when he doesn't get his way, when Belly says, "This is something I really need to do for myself," he goes cold and tells her to never fucking call him again. So no, I don't find this episode to be boring. And it really stung to see the criticism of that. I didn't just see this episode as product placement. I was much higher on it than I think most reviewers are because I've been Belly. I've felt like her, thinking that I would have one thing, whether that is school or a job, stability in some kind of way, something to root your feet into, only to have it all ripped away. And understanding the gut punch of what she is saying when she says, I truly don't have anything left. That's what rock bottom feels like after a relationship where your identity is so enmeshed with somebody else's. You feel absolutely depleted, and everything about who you thought you were needs to be stripped away for you to find the foundation of self that is underneath. The AirTag being named Belly and her traipsing across Paris looking for it, that is a metaphor for her searching for herself all across Paris. And as someone who literally moved states to heal from my relationship, who would lay in the middle of my living room with zero furniture because I did not even have the willpower to put my apartment together when I moved, stayed like that for months, where I would go to work and then I would come home and lay with my cat Sherlock on my chest in a pretty much catatonic state for the rest of the evening. And I did that for months until I finally started to de-thaw from what the relationship was and come out of it. So I get it. I understand Belly. I understand how she's feeling. They say that you can't heal in the same environment where you got sick. That's why she's like, I just can't go back to Finch, even though we know that Jeremiah is not going back. It doesn't matter. Her whole life is wrapped up in this person, is wrapped up at the school that he committed to before they were even together. And it's part of the decision why she decided to go to Finch in the first place. This isn't a story about Team Conrad or Team Jeremiah. And I know that we on the internet just are so broken that we want to feel cohesive and connected over something. And it seems like, the Coldplay Kiss Cam and this could be the saving graces to make us feel that humanity is in fact intact in some capacity or another. But it is not about Team Conrad or Team Jeremiah. It's a coming of age story about a girl. It's about a girl who is growing into herself. She is becoming a woman. She is discovering what she is capable of. And this episode, over the first time in 3 seasons, when we are nearly at the end of the series as a whole, this is the first time that we really, really get to see what that looks like, what her true coming of age story looks like. The moment that Belly decides that she's ready to break out of her own self-made cage and see who is underneath all of the overgrown skin of her youth, while the camera pans across Notre Dame being rebuilt, that is the kind of storytelling that I want from shows about women, because it's real, it's relatable, it's inspiring, and I don't just like it because I'm moving to Paris in 6 weeks. Okay, let's go into our slay by slay. These are just bullet points of my thoughts through the episode. They are in chronological order, but they are not as organized as I would normally do them because I knew that my femme frame was a little bit longer today. So let's go into it. First and foremost, this conversation between Laurel and Adam, I saw a post and I wish I knew where I saw it so that I could credit the person, but that was basically like if this was a show in the 2000s, like on the CW, where we had 20 episodes, they would have had like a side plot for like 4 or 5 episodes where we would have gotten more in depth. And a lot of people, myself included, like to remind the internet that in the books, Laurel and Adam date before Adam dates Susanna. But in the show, I think this has a lot to do with Laurel's hurt about him moving on from Susanna. Susanna was really the love of her life. And the fact that Adam is just moving on, he invited the in-laws, he's invited Kaylee, she feels like he is defiling something that would have been Susanna's stomping grounds, essentially. The other thing is, you can tell that they have a shared history, but what I dislike about Adam and what I dislike about Jeremiah is that despite the fact that you can tell that there is a shared history between Adam and Laurel, and I'm not even just talking about like, oh, they dated in the books. I'm talking about you can tell that these are people who have been in each other's lives since college, since they've met, right? So for as long as she knew Susanna, she pretty much known Adam the same amount of time. And the fact that Adam could disrespect Laurel so much is really just unfathomable to me. He is the most obtuse person. This was the most likable he's been in any episode that we've ever seen him, but he is so unlikable, and their shared history does not read as two people who are comfortable and intimately know each other. Like, and again, I'm not talking about intimate like sex. I'm talking about like, hey, we've known each other for a long time. I know your ins and outs. I know your things. I know stuff about you. The fact that they would know each other this long and the tension would be this thick, it really rubs me the wrong way that Adam would just disrespect her the way that he does. I don't like the way he talks to her. I don't like the way Jeremiah talks to her later. You will hear a whole rant about that, I am sure. Okay, then it kind of cuts to Jer and everybody at the bar. I don't know where Annika went. I don't know why Denise is there. The C characters of the season have truly confused me. But anyway, we see Jer with his friends, and then everyone leaves. Redbird, Ethan, the other guy, I don't know what his name is. All of these people leave Jeremiah. They are his friends. He's just called off his wedding. He's drunk. He needs support, and they've left. Cool. The only people that are there for Jeremiah over the course of this episode are people that are connected to Belly and people that love Belly. The people that love Belly are deliberately taking care of Jeremiah because they love Belly. And I just want to throw that out there because Steven and Taylor are the two people who stay with him till last call, which is the last call on one end of the pun, or the spectrum of what this episode title means, that he literally stays at the bar till last call. And they are the ones that go home with him to the honeymoon suite. They sleep over. They make sure he's okay. They take his phone. They prevent him from doing stupid stuff. Like, they are real OGs in this episode. And even here in this scene at the bar, do we understand how deep Jeremiah's competitive streak goes? Because he says to Taylor and to Steven, well, at least you're here because you chose me over Belly. He's made him and Conrad teams. You have to pick me or pick Conrad. Okay? He's done this now to people that love and care about Belly. He is putting them in categories and in teams. You chose me over Belly. Why does anyone have to pick one or the other? People that love and care about you, like Steven, is a nice bridge of people that care about both of you. Shouldn't have to pick. He can love you both. He can have separate relationships with you both. Before this happened, before the wedding, and still after the wedding, it's not going to be easy. I'm not saying that the path is necessarily clear. I'm not saying it's not going to take work, but it doesn't have to be that you're Team Belly or Team Conrad. Team Belly or Team Jeremiah just because they're going through a breakup. And I love that Taylor's like, hey, love you, but actually I'm just here because Belly's MIA. And I like that she tells it how it is, because the people that are surrounding Jeremiah this episode are Belly's technical family and friends. Then it cuts to Belly. She's coming up in Paris. You're on your own, kid. I had such chills watching this, watching her come up, watching her look around and feel overwhelmed by the beauty of Paris. I say this as somebody who has been there and somebody who is moving there, to just viscerally feel this in my bones, what it feels like to step up and look at the surroundings and just be like, holy shit, this is a beautiful city. There is just nothing like it. There's literally nothing like it. And I've grown up in the most famous city in the world, New York City, or at least I perceive New York to be the most famous city in the world. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Anyway, I say that as somebody who grew up in a pretty famous city. Everyone knows New York City at the very least. And I had chills just watching her come up and look around and feel so taken by it, and knowing the experience that she's going to have, and feeling so excited for my own journey and the experience that I'm about to have. Only for me to want to punch Antonin. I was like, this really sucks. And I can't stand that the girl was like, you came here just on like a whim, hoping that we would have the spot for you. And she's like, no, I came here because he told me that you had a spot for me. And I like that she stood up for herself there. And I also like that it didn't work out. I like that it's not this neat, cookie cutter, clean exit that she gets to make from the Fisher boys and have like something to lean on as a crutch. I think that she really does need to figure out what she wants to do next, how she wants to do it, how she wants to approach it. Like, she not having school and not having something to lean on and having to truly discover herself without any noise, any distraction, that is where she is going to have the richest glow up energetically. Okay, Then we've got Jeremiah talking to Laurel, to which my note is Jeremiah's response to Laurel is foul in capital letters. I cannot stand so many things about this. Number one, you are hoping that Belly comes back and sees you down and out, that you'll still get to be in a relationship with her. You want her to come back so that, okay, the wedding was a mistake, but, we can still be together and figure things out. And knowing that in the back of your mind, you still make an active choice to talk to somebody who is going to be your mother-in-law, somebody who is your mother's best friend, who has been a part of your life, who has helped raise you, who has been there for you. You decide to talk to her in such a disgusting way. If I was Laurel, I know she was hurting right there. I know she was. If I was Laurel, when he shut the door on her, I would have been like, man, I feel that bullet skimming my face, because she dodged it and Belly dodged it. Because what do you mean that could have been her son-in-law? What do you mean that could have been somebody that was with your daughter that responds this way? You can't compartmentalize for 5 minutes to think like, well, if I did get back together with Belly, like this would be a major rift between Belly and her mom, that I acted so blatantly out of my hurt that I talked this disrespectfully to Laurel. No, thank you. Laurel, Steven, Taylor are the three people who are showing up, and Conrad is there on the side, okay? Conrad's there on the side and he's doing stuff on the side, but obviously Jeremiah doesn't want him to be fully in the picture. Nowhere in any of this 24 hours after the wedding, besides being at the bar and drinking, is anyone that is directly connected to Jeremiah. Jeremiah's dad deliberately passes the torch to Conrad without even knowing the full story. It's just like, Conrad, where are you, buddy? You gonna take care of your brother? Because I don't do good at stuff like that. Not only doesn't show up for him, but deliberately skips out on the day by driving Kaylee's parents home. So isn't even like physically in the vicinity while Jeremiah is going through the thick of it. None of his friends are around. Redbird doesn't show up at all. Ethan doesn't show up at all. None of these people show up. Not a single person from the office where Jeremiah works and allegedly is going to be taking a full-time job. All of these people came for the wedding. Not a single person who is connected directly to Jeremiah with no connection to Belly at all shows up for Jeremiah. The only people that show up for Jeremiah are people that love Belly, and that is an indicator, and this is why I can't stand that the fucking internet can't stand Belly, because that is an indicator, despite the fact that you may feel that she's rage baiting you or you don't understand the choices that she's making, the fact that these people show up for Jeremiah is an indicator of the quality person that Belly is. And I know that people are going to say, but this and but that. She's a teenage girl. She's 21 years old right now. I'm sorry. What shit were you doing at 21? Because I'm 33 and I can tell you that my 20s and my 30s were significantly different. She's 21 years old. She was a teenager when we first saw her. She was in high school. Like, who were you in high school? And because the target audience is millennials, it is people like me in our 30s and 40s who are watching the show and being like, I'm rage baited by Belly every weekend. Why? Because you have unresolved trauma from your own fucking teenage years or your own 20s? Like, what? You need to give Belly, I'm not saying a pass on bad behavior, but a pass on normal teenage behavior, on par with other teenagers, on par with other 21-year-olds, okay? Making stupid decisions. When I was 21, I got a tattoo, okay? Wasn't actually when I was younger than that, I got a tattoo. When I was 19, I got a tattoo. Was it my mother's favorite choice? No. My mom called me like 5 times and was like, are you sure this is something that's permanent that's going to be on your body? I don't regret it, and I never will regret it because it's the best tattoo, and I love it very much. I love all of my tattoos. But like, everyone makes stupid choices in their 20s, in their teens, okay? And I resonate with that. So I just think it tells you on a deeper level who Belly is, that people continue to show up for her in her absence because they know that helping Jeremiah and taking care of him and being kind to him, being compassionate to him and helping him, and that is the type of person that Belly cultivates around her, and that is not the type of person that Jeremiah has around him. And rant. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Okay. Steven's beef with Conrad seems to me like it is really about his own hurt. Steven's hurt about his dissolution of the relationship with Conrad that they went through and not actually about Jeremiah and Belly. I think it is about his own hurt, his own internalized hurt about how much he looked up to Conrad, how much he admired Conrad, only for Conrad to not just disappear on Belly, but disappear on everybody, and Stephen not knowing how to process that. And here's what I want to say about Conrad. In season 1, Jeremiah, once again, says to Conrad after the volleyball game, "Congratulations on today. I know how much you love to win." And Conrad says back to him, "It's not about winning. It's about doing it right. It's about doing something right." So for Conrad, it is not about winning. It is not about the end result. It is about the integrity of what you are doing, right? So for Conrad, who insists on doing things the right quote unquote way, he is doing both and right now. The right thing was to tell Belly the truth. It was the right thing for him to tell her the truth. It was the right thing for her to hear the truth. Conrad also canceling his flight to stick around and ensure that Jeremiah is eating, that he has the red Gatorade that he likes, etc., is also the right thing. So there is no win-win or lose-lose. It is both, and because he is doing the right thing to the best of his ability for everyone involved. And I really believe that to be true with Conrad. I think he weighs things out, and I do think that he weighed out what the right thing to do here is. And I think that's why, even though Belly tells him to leave, we get that scene of him going to her and saying, "I'm not going to see you for a while, but I want to let you know that it was worth it and that I don't regret loving you. And it physically hurts still to be here with you, but just know that, like, this was worth it to me. Loving you was worth it." That is the right thing. It's the right thing for him to say. It's the right thing for her to hear. He is doing the right thing, even though it is the wrong thing for his relationship with Jeremiah. And then he's doing the right thing in his relationship with Jeremiah by trying to do what he can from afar, even though he has done something else. You know what I mean? Am I making sense? Am I doing girl math right here, like emotional girl math? But that was important for me to say because I was thinking about that the entire episode. I also love that Taylor gives Conrad credit. She gives him credit about the burger. She gives him credit about the Gatorade. She's letting Jeremiah know, yeah, Conrad's doing stuff from afar to help you. And I think it's the right thing to do there as well, to let Jeremiah know that Conrad isn't being completely selfish here, that he's trying to do what he can from where he is. I also love that Taylor gently, kindly tells Jeremiah that Belly is in fact not his whole life. Then it cuts back to Belly. Okay, I've skipped most of the parts of her like just traipsing through Paris on the bus, on a plane, a train, right? I've also skipped over the fact, though I'm obviously mentioning it now, so I'm not skipping over this, but the fact that I have never been in Paris and gotten up to pay for my bill. I don't know why she got up to leave the table. I have never gotten up to pay for a bill ever in Paris. When you are in Paris, you sit, you luxuriate, and then when you are ready, you catch the eye of the waiter, waitress, whoever, and you ask for the check, and they bring over a card reader to you. I don't even know how many meals I've eaten in Paris, but so many. I've literally never had it happen any other way. I've never gotten up to pay. Ever. So anyway, that's a small rant, but let's bring it back to the fact that Belly is now outside of this nightclub. She knows that her bag is inside, and she ends up saving Gemma. I can't think of the actress's name, but she is on Heartstopper, which is another one of my favorite TV shows. This is where we really start to understand that Belly is making the transition from Belly to Isabel. She kind of says Isabel when she's at the airport, but you usually do give your formal name at the airport, so this wasn't like shocking or surprising, but the fact that she introduces herself as Isabel, she says it at the school, Isabel Conklin, again, another place where you would use it formally, so this is the first time that we are seeing her in an informal setting, and she is saying, my name is Isabel. And I really just love that. This idea of growing up, growing out of her childhood name, leaving this part of her identity behind, discovering who Isabel is. Who is Isabel? Oh, not who is Belly, this girl attached to these boys, but who is Isabel internally. And I love that we get to see that here. And I love that she saves Gemma and she makes this like split decision and helps her out. And I love that that's what gets her into the party. And I love that that's what solidifies her friendship, because Belly is a real one. Somebody who was afraid, somebody who was antisocial, somebody who wasn't kind or compassionate would not do any of that stuff. And we've known since season 1, Belly's got an extroverted side to her. She wants to make friends. She wants to do right by the Debs in the first season. And we get to see that here in a different way. So I just love this scene. I also loved the scene with the guy in the club because the rage I felt, first of all, pickpockets in Paris are a real thing. I don't know if I've ever seen it with like a bag like that or in a setting where it's not necessarily touristy. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it's kind of crazy that it was this whole big bag. Anyway, pickpockets in Paris are like a real big thing. And watching her get her bag back was so vindicating. It also happens to come after, I know the scene was filmed, but if you've seen the TikTok of the girl in Italy who grabbed the pickpocket by her hair and was like, you stole from me, and the pickpocket was like, call the police, and she's like, yeah, call the fucking police. She was a New Yorker, shout out to her, whoever that woman was. Hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about, and if I can find the TikTok, I'll put it in my show notes. But there was this video, right? So it's coming off of that where we're like seeing a lot of this also online right now. But the rage I felt seeing her backpack on this guy and seeing him being like, for those of you that are watching, you got to see me do the dance move. For those of you that are listening, you'll just have a slightly awkward pause as I did the dance move, but you'll know exactly what I mean in your head, because that brought up a pit of feminine rage that was not dormant in me, but that had been sleeping with like one eye open. That sparked a rage inside of me that I did not know could exist. I was irate. I was so mad for Belly. Like, I also wanted to get into a fight with this guy. And just knowing she's just called off her wedding, she's had the love of her life tell her that he loves her and she doesn't know what to do with that information because she was going to marry his brother. She's been in a 4-year relationship where that was about to conclude in a marriage that's not happening. She's disappointed all of her friends and family. She shows up to go to school. School's not happening for her. She just flew across the country. She's now got to fly home. She doesn't know what she's going to do with herself. I understand where she's coming at from this perspective because the intensity of her rage is already there. And now this is like this sentimental thing that she has got. I did see some like theories online floating around that she has the infinity necklace in there and that's why she goes so hard on it. Not just because of the ring or the wedding dress, but because the necklace is in there as well, which I think would be really interesting and fascinating to see that later on. It perhaps would give us a little bit more understanding of the rage over this. But the rage I felt at this guy with her bag, it was a feeling of immense satisfaction when she kicks him in the legs and he falls over. She rips the backpack off of him and he's like, you're psycho, and she's like, is this your dress? She pulls out a wedding dress. The friend group that she becomes friends with behind her is gagged. The people next to him that this guy was techno dancing with, gagged, and she is just like, yeah. And I really felt that. I thought that was a great scene. It made the entire satisfaction of watching her go all around Paris to find this bag. It made it very, very satiating to watch. Then it cuts back to Steven and Taylor. They're having a conversation. It finally comes out to Steven about Lacey, and the scene was very funny, but I want to know why Steven didn't have a bigger reaction. And I don't know if it's because he was just so engaged with the conversation that he was having with Taylor that like that's just got to be on the back burner because they're broken up anyway. I don't know, but I almost wish that he had a bigger reaction to it. I almost wish that there was more of a reconciliation between him knowing that information and how he feels about it. And who knows, we might see that there's 2 episodes left. He might really go at Jeremiah and chew him out a little bit, in which case I would really like that a lot. Then we get Steven on his knees for Taylor. He's sitting on the couch and then he kind of goes to his knees. Now, when Jeremiah got to his knees in the beginning of the season, I wanted to vomit. It gave me the hard ick. Watching Steven on his knees and kind of slide across the floor for Taylor, 12 out of 10, no notes. It made my mouth go dry. I love Steven and Taylor together, and I have since day one. I also love that when it cuts back to Belly, her Parisian friends validate her. They call her a badass. And she's like, no, I'm just bad. and they're like, we've all done worse things. And then they go around the table and they share all of the bad, worst things that they've done, and they make her feel better. And I love that she's got these friends that are not trying to be like, wow, this thing that you did was really, really bad. Because honestly, at the end of the day, not going through with a marriage, even though it's causing you pain, even though she wasn't even the one that broke it off, but whatever. Not going through with a marriage that you don't want to be in, or that you're not going to want to be in long term, is going to cause pain, but it's going to cause pain when you leave it or exit it in the future anyway. So there's pain on either side. I love that her Parisian friends are like, you're a badass, and we've all done bad things. Jeremiah's response then to Conrad, and Jeremiah showing up and telling Conrad that Belly is in Paris, that she's not coming home. This is cruel. This is why I hate Jeremiah. Him saying, she didn't pick me, but she didn't pick you either. This is not only absurd to me, because literally her exact words, I'm pretty sure, last episode are, I choose you, I choose us, when she wants to go through with the wedding. But the fact that it's such a competition to him and something to rub in Conrad's face is the bottom line of how he sees Belly, as an object to be possessed to prove in some way that he is better than Conrad. The difference is, in my heart of hearts, I know that Conrad heard Taylor say, hey, she told Laurel she needs some space, so give her some space. I will tell you when I hear from her. He hears that she needs space and he eases up on that. And he's uncomfortable having this conversation with Jeremiah. He's just uncomfortable all around. If Belly had been the one to call Conrad and she gave this speech on self-discovery, Conrad would applaud her. He would accept it, he would take it on the chin, and he would do that without viewing it as a rejection to him personally. How do I know this? Because, and I would love to do a deep dive on this for next episode, and maybe I will. Conrad has owned up and apologized every time he's made a mistake, big or small, since season 1. And because, additionally, he has spent the entire summer prioritizing Belly's needs. So if Belly would say, I really need to figure out who I am, Conrad is not going to be the person that says, I know who you are, I'm going to remind you every day. He's going to be the person that says, okay, Belly, go figure out who you are. Guess what? Somebody who's secure about that is going to be here when you return. And that is what Conrad is. He's our secure little baby in therapy, okay? Then we get this final conversation between Adam and Conrad. And this conversation is so painful to me because Adam is so wrong. First and foremost, Adam completely delegating his parental responsibility to take care of Jeremiah in any capacity because he can't, he's not good at those things, is fucking ridiculous. Then you should have had a vasectomy and you shouldn't have had children. Anyway, it's a fictional show and these are fictional characters and I will not get that upset over this. However, Adam, not knowing that Conrad was in love with Belly is also fucking ridiculous. Adam saying that Conrad has other people to lean on is fucking ridiculous. This man doesn't know his children at all. Either one of them. When Susanna had cancer and Conrad was dealing with it, the person that he was leaning on was Belly. He had one person, singular, Belly. That was the only person, even from season 1, we see that Belly can see that Conrad is carrying a lot. And she's like, come on, you can tell me, you can tell me. And a few times in season 1, he's about to say something to her and then somebody else will walk in or something will happen or something like that to interrupt the moment, and he doesn't end up saying anything. But we see from even before they were dating that he was going to confide in her that there is something deeper happening with Susanna. So he doesn't have a ton of people that he can lean on. And I'm not saying he doesn't end up in therapy or have friends. We see his life in California. We see that he has Agnes. We see that he's playing football again. We obviously see that he's in therapy. So I'm not saying that he doesn't currently have people to lean on. I am saying that at the time when that was happening, that was not true. Conrad is somebody who notoriously has held something inside. He even pokes fun at himself over this when he meets with Laurel. He's like, what? Hold on to everything? Me? Huh? What? So this is not something that oh yeah, he had this huge support system. He had Belly and then him and Belly broke up. So he had his mom and then his mom died. So, there's that too. And he didn't really ever have Jeremiah. They weren't really that close. It says that they're not that close in the books. And then we get these depictions of them not really connecting or clicking in a lot of ways. I also want to know, when Adam says to Conrad that Conrad treated him like the enemy, why Conrad does not directly say to his dad that he knew that Adam was cheating on Susanna. And that was where this resentment came from. I don't understand why there are certain conversations like, hey, Jeremiah cheated on Belly. That didn't come out sooner. And I don't understand why this conversation about the fact that Adam was cheating on Susanna hasn't come out. Like, the fact that Laurel knows that Conrad knew this whole time, but that Adam doesn't know that Conrad resents him because he knew, this would have been an opportune time. Have you ever seen Jack Sparrow where he's like encouraging Will to kiss Elizabeth, and he was like, if you were looking for the opportune moment, that was it. Like, this fireside chat that you're having would have been the moment to be like, Dad, the reason why that happened is because I knew that you were cheating on Mom. And let that land on your father and see how he responds to that, because him responding to that and then him hearing that information and then going to Jeremiah to step up and give him the hug, that would have made that moment so profound. But instead, it doesn't make any sense why Adam ends up going and hugging Jeremiah at the end. It just doesn't. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Because he's not good at it 2 minutes ago, and now he's good at it. I don't know. Anyway, this is my own rant. This is my own problems, and I, once again, recognize that Adam is a fictional character and that this is not that serious. But essentially, Adam in this conversation is saying that Adam and Conrad are very alike, that he perceives them to be alike. And there is this whole monologue in the book, in the third book, where Conrad is like, hey, I quit football, I quit doing all of this stuff. Like, I started going down a different path and started being bad boy Conrad, or whatever we want to call it, because I didn't want to be like my dad, because my dad was a person that could cheat on his wife. My dad was the type of person that could, you know, skip out on family stuff for work and stuff like that. So he's like, I didn't want to be anything like him. So I started doing all of these different things. And one of those things that he says is like, including quitting football, which is something that I loved. So I don't like that they sort of like draw them together here and what that means. And I'm wondering how Conrad is going to sort of digest this conversation and move forward from it, and what that will mean for the last 2 episodes that we have. All right, let's crack open our burn book for this episode, starting with our Bold and Bothered award. This award is strictly for the Femme Furious. It's the quote or moment that relays the most feminine rage. And obviously, this week, it goes to Belly kicking the guy and ripping the backpack off of him. The Shiro Award. This award goes to the baddie who is the most inspiring, or the moment that is the most empowering. And this, to me, is Laurel figuring out not only how to make the most of the wedding stuff, like she forces Adam to take the food and donate it to the women's shelter, which is, you know, where Susanna consistently donated and spent her time and volunteered. But they also take all of the flowers that were at the wedding, I guess the centerpieces and maybe the bouquets and stuff like that, and bring them to the hospital, which I also thought was really nice. And then after doing all of that, after being incredibly charitable with her daughter's faux pas of a wedding, she still goes to check on Jer, only to be reamed out by him. And so she is the baddie of all baddies, okay? The Femme Fatale Award, you know, for the most smash the patriarchy moment of the episode. And this goes to Belly saving Gemma from being hit on by a guy that she did not want to be hit on by. Speak Your Truth trophy. This goes to the best line or quote, and this has to be, rebuilding is always possible. It has to be. And this is happening as Belly is overlooking Notre Dame being rebuilt. The honorary heartthrob, because I'm just a girl, okay, and I want to talk about the most wound-worthy moments. Stephen on his knees for Taylor. 12 out of 10, no notes. Mouth dry. So hot. Feral for it. Biggest belly flop. Adam. Just literally fucking anything that Adam does. Sorry. Sounds of Summer. This goes to the best needle drop of the episode. And of course, this is going to You're on Your Own, Kid. I was like snapping like we were at a poetry read when this came up. And that is our episode for this week. Thank you for listening to Femme Furious. Comment, review, share it with your friends. I will be back on Friday. We are doing a deep dive of Stranger Things. Season 1, episodes 1 through 4 is already out. You can go watch it now. This Friday will be Season 1, episodes 5 through 8. And then I will be back here next Tuesday with our penultimate episode of the entire series of The Summer I Turned Pretty. And until then, don't ever fucking call me again.